You're on mute, so we can't hear or confirm that our system's working. But right, okay. Mayor Fugazi and I are on the same page on that.
And I can always unmute myself, but I
Yeah,
figured the universal language.
yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Julie will be here shortly. Bless you.
I think we're already recording, but happy holidays and good wishes to all. We cannot hear you. No, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yes. Hello.
Happy holidays.
If you can just.
Right.
And just out of courtesy for Vice Chair of the Committee, Roche, we'll wait till exactly 3 o'clock before starting.
We live already or not yet?
Oh, we are recording now. Yes. Yes, you can push that one. I'm just planning to just start with a little basic thing. I don't have the little script. I'm fine with that. If you're fine with that. Yes. As long as you're fine. Okay.
If you're
My apologies. Okay, so it is 3 o'clock and I'm calling to order the Executive Committee meeting of Ava Community Energy. Today is Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. And we're in the Altamont Conference Room here at 1999 Harrison Street, Suite 2300 in Oakland, California. We also have remote locations at Hayward City Hall, Stockton City Hall, and the City Office of Pleasanton City Hall. At this point in time, would you please take roll, Committee Clerk?
Thank you. Alameda County,
Present.
Stockton,
Present.
Pleasanton,
Present.
Piedmont,
Present.
Hayward, San Leandro.
Present.
We have a quorum.
At this point in time, we'll move to item number 2. It's an opportunity for members of the public to offer comment on items that are not on the agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of Ava Community Energy. Do we have any cards for anybody in the room?
There are no cards
Okay,
filled out at this time.
So then we will move to our remote locations. Is there anyone from the public who has arrived? Seeing none, we will proceed to in-person comment online if we have any. That's not at remote locations.
There are no hands raised at this
We are
time.
closing public comment and moving to item number 3 on our agenda. Item number 3 is approval of our minutes from November 5th, 2025. Are there any questions about the minutes? Seeing none, we'll take public comment on this item.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, do we have any public comment in the remote locations? Is there any public comment on the minutes? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion on the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
I'll second.
I've got a motion from Member Anderson and a second from Member Marquez. Please vote.
Thank you. Alameda County,
Aye.
Stockton,
Abstain.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
Piedmont,
Aye.
Hayward.
Aye.
May I verify the location? Your location, please?
Actually, that's a good point. Maybe I shouldn't be voting. I'm running late. I'm in the car and I will be in the Hayward location in 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
San Leandro,
Aye.
the minutes are approved.
We'll move to item number 4. It's an informational item on the value proposition. And so I don't have an annotator that tells me who, so
I'm gonna kick it off.
I'll start with Howard.
I will kick it off and then I'll hand it over to Kelly to continue the presentation. For introduction and context, we reviewed in our November board meeting our budget forecast for 2026, included a variety of measures that we were considering in order to manage our financial forecast there. One of those items is related to adjustments to the value proposition. We did get formal direction from the board to at least move forward with the recommendation in light of our rate setting protocol. And so you can go to the next slide, Adrian, thank you. And so that rate setting protocol does require us to have 2 public webinars and to present this to our XCOM and then to the full board before taking that formal action. In this case, we presented it to our November board already. So to some extent, our rate protocol may not technically require us to bring this to subcommittee, but we felt this is obviously a substantive item, so we want to bring it forth regardless to make sure to have good process, transparency to the public, and of course, allow for some additional dialogue with the board. So today's presentation, Kelly will actually go through the actual public presentation that we provide to public webinars. Just a brief kind of review of that, and then we'll end that, and I'll have a couple slides at the end to also just talk a little bit more about the value proposition change sensitivities, so we can see that dialogue going forward. So with that, I'll hand it to
And we do have approximately how much total time for this item? Approximately
this
40
is probably our
minutes?
meatiest item, so I would say about 40-45 minutes, probably what we're gonna do here. Yeah.
To make sure that we have enough time for any comments and discussion that needs to occur.
Okay, so Adrian, if you could go to the next slide, please. And this is just an update on a reminder of the schedule. This is also posted in the memo, and you saw this at the full board meeting 2 weeks ago. We are here at present rates to the executive committee, so we're tracking along with the plan that we had outlined for the community in that meeting. We've also already done one of our 2 community webinars that was held last week. The second of those is tomorrow. And our public comment is open to receive, we're open to receiving written comments as well up until Monday morning. So let's go to the next slide. And as Howard said, this is the presentation that we are giving to the public. So a lot of the beginning slides we can skip through because you already know who Ava Community Energy is. So Adrian, if you would just scroll through this next section here. This is just, we're telling the public who we are and how to participate in the public meeting. You can go through to the next one. And then if you could pause at the next slide after this. So definitions, this is where we're talking about, here's what we offer today. Everyone here is familiar with our 2 service plan offerings and PG&E. If we go to the next one, this is also familiar to this audience here, the default service plan. We're reminding here the public what plan they may be enrolled in. Some folks don't know, they're not looking at their bill on a regular basis, or they're not following along with what's going on with the agency. So here we're describing the different plans that customers have been defaulted to. So if you go to the next one, Adrian, here we're defining, again, this is just definition section. This is our opportunity to share with customers the difference between the rates and the value proposition. The rates, as we know, that's what you're charged per kilowatt hour, and the value proposition is how that compares to PG&E. And so if we go to the next slide, this is a way of describing the PCIA for someone who isn't as involved in rates all the time. What we're showing here is how the PCIA affects AVA's rates. So this is setting us up for that low PCIA versus a high PCIA environment. And you can see on the left of the 2 bar graphs, in a low PCIA environment, AVA's effective rate, the rate that we charge to customers, the revenue that we take in, can be higher, and we can still offer a discount to PG&E. In a high PCIA environment, that's the green bar now we see is it's bigger. We see that there's a higher PCIA, which means that AVA isn't taking in as much revenue to still provide our customers with that discount to PG&E, the bar on the right. So here we're just continuing to set this up so that our customers that are listening into these webinars kind of have a little bit of that background. Okay, and if you go to the next slide, Adrian, I think it's just a pacer slide, and we'll go to the next one. So everyone in this room has seen this. This is taken directly from the item 2 weeks ago. So I don't think I need to walk through this for this audience. I can pause if there's any questions or if
Let
you'd
me
like to
take
add.
1 minute to talk about this because I know a couple of our board members here were not in attendance.
Oh,
at the
thank
November
you.
meeting, So
Yeah.
there may be some benefit there. This is, obviously, there's a lot on this slide. It's really complex. Probably a difficult slide to truly convey in a public webinar. But for this audience, certainly it's worth touching on some of these elements. So this shows our rates going back to 2019. You can see 2019 to 2021 timeframe, those rates were in the 10-11 cent per kilowatt hour range. And then in 22 to 26 or 22 to 25, you can see it's elevated in the 14 to 16 cent range. What is key to all of this, of course, is in 2026, we are forecasting our generation rates to go down 30-ish%, right? So getting back down to the 10-cent level. We have not seen it at that level really in our history in operation. So while we're talking about some challenges from a financial perspective, this is all really good news for our customers. We are finding a way to bring down our customer generation costs in a very, very meaningful way. Unfortunately, you can see in that bar chart breakdown in 2026, the orange bar is the AVA generation portion. And that is also one of the lowest levels we've ever had historically. And unfortunately, it's coming following a period of high energy prices. And what that means is we have a lot of energy hedges and contracts in place that were put in place during those high periods. So that's why it puts our financial headroom in a really tight position in 2026 in particular, as rates are coming down because energy prices are softening. But it's also driven by that restructuring of PCI, where the orange component there is a larger proportional component than it has been for the last several years. So it really squeezes our financial headroom and why we're talking about making adjustments to the value proposition.
All right, we can go on to the next slide. So as Howard just mentioned, historically, when rates are high, our Bright Choice discount has decreased. If we were to look back at that previous slide, we'd see that when rates are low, the value proposition, the difference to PG&E is lower. Rates are high, the value proposition is higher. As we just said, the 2026 rates are forecasted to be 40 to 50% lower than 2025, which is great for our customers. It's 30% lower when you include the PCIA. We are looking to maintain a balanced budget. And when we're presenting this to the general public, we're not this is just about the value proposition. It isn't about any of the other options that staff has to maintain that balanced budget. So this is just, here's why we're looking to make this change. We're looking to make this change in order to have a balanced budget. And at the November board meeting, staff recommended option 1, which is to change the Bright Choice discount to the discount to PG&E from 5% to 1%, and to increase the Renewable 100 premium from 1/4 of a penny up to 1.25 per kilowatt hour. We're also providing an option here of option 2 as just another choice that the board could take later on this month. We go to the next slide. So here's, for the customer, what does this mean? What is this discount change? Sounds like it's a bad thing, but in the bigger context, this is all really good for customers. At a 1% discount, customers' bills to AVA are still going from $50 to $35 a month. They're still seeing a 30% savings, even with that change in the value proposition. So even, this line here in gold, you see the Renewable 100 rate in 2026 is expected to be lower by 20% than customers were paying for Bright Choice in 2025. So this is all based on our average residential customer using 350 kilowatt hours a month. Customers that use more energy will see an even bigger delta, potentially, depending on when they're using their energy. And there are obviously customers that are using less than 350. So their bills are going to look a little bit different. This is just for an average customer.
Can I make one really quick comment? Mm-hmm. You can see there's obviously 2 scenarios for Bright Choice, naming that 1% discount versus 0% discount. Currently, our discount, of course, being 5%. we intentionally put out two options here because we don't want to just list one option and say there's nothing else that can be considered. Obviously, going to the December board meeting, any action, any change to the value proposition can be made by the board. So we just wanted to make sure to provide some broader set of options for the public to be able to comment on what they, so they're not just anchored to one choice alone.
All right, the next slide shows this same information, but in a manner that the board is more accustomed to seeing, which is looking at, so this is a slide that was just added for the executive committee. Here, instead of looking at an average monthly bill, we're just looking at rates. So it's the same exact information. We're just presenting it a little bit different here with, you know, 14 cents to a 10 cent versus $50 to $35. It's just a different way of presenting the same information, since that's consistent with how we've been discussing this in, at other meetings. And then if we go to the next slide, we see Ava's value proposition history. It's not unheard of for Ava to change our value proposition. We've done it twice, or excuse me, 3 times. In our history, we started at 1.5%. And then Ava spent 2 years at just a 1% discount. So this is not something that is that outrageous. We've done it for 2 years, and we've maintained customer participation rates through that change. From July 2022 to June 2022, we were at that 1%. Renewable 100 was at 1 cent per kilowatt hour for that entire time period for those 4 years. So the proposal that we're looking at of 1.25 penny is a difference, right? We haven't been at 1.25 penny for Renewable 100, but we have been at 1% below PG&E. And then we also, as we saw going back to one of the earlier graphs, if you can remember, where then rates started to climb in 2022. And we were able to then increase our discount as other market forces and global forces created a rise in energy prices. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, now we're back to just public comment period. This is where we're talking to any participants about, if you go to the next slide, Adrian, we're just saying, hey, here's how you do it if you want to participate in the public meeting. Just letting everyone know that this is being recorded. At the meeting that we had last Tuesday, we had one member of the public join for the first 10 to 15 minutes of the presentation, and then they left. And we had a couple of Ava staff members on the line to listen in. I think as of right now, we have another 2 or 3 members of the public that have registered for the meeting on Thursday. The nice thing is we're doing these meetings and those are going up on the web so that someone who wants to maybe make a written comment in advance of the deadline, if you go to the next, I think it's 2 more slides, Adrian, or maybe it's this one. Maybe go back up one. Sorry. Here, the written public comments are due by Monday the 8th. And typically, and most of our comments we receive are written when we've done this in the past. Most people will send an email with their comments in. And the hope here is that we're providing this material on our website. They can go and watch a brief video to get the context before they submit a public comment. So we've received 2 or 3 comments thus far. Mostly folks just want to see their bills go down. There hasn't been meaningful feedback on this difference between a 5% and a 1% discount or the 1/4 penny to a 1.5 pennies. It's largely just been, hey, everything's expensive. Please decrease my bill. So we continue on. I think, Howard, you had a couple of slides you wanted to close us out with?
Yeah, you can just go on a couple more slides. I think there's a thank you slide and then one after that. So that was the formal presentation that was provided to the public via the webinar. Just 2 slides here for my wrap, or sorry, 3 slides. So we will bring this forward, of course, to the December board meeting. This value proposition, the change to the value proposition, will be wrapped into an overall budget discussion item with a set of actions for the board to consider taking. So just want to highlight that. You can go on the next slide, Adrian. So there's two slides we pulled from the November presentation just to kind of put this all in context, right? So as we look at the budget forecast between July 2025 through December of 2026, there is a net deficit of $247 million. That's just a little bit covered up here on our screen, but it's in the top right corner, $247 million negative. That's obviously a sizable number, and so we presented this set of measures to consider to offset that deficit. Obviously, we had some active discussion about the on-bill credits. You can see that's sort of stricken from this list, and so we will bring forward this list and some other items to the December board meeting for consideration. I'll present this probably in 3 different scenarios where we're kind of pulling these various measures to different extents to try to get us to address that deficit number. So I just want to put this change in value proposition, obviously, in context of why we're doing that. And then you can go to the last slide, Adrian. So this is just the sensitivities chart that we had provided in that same meeting. And this is just to show you when thinking about using this as a way to manage the sort of the financial forecast. Obviously, we can adjust the value proposition to any number of levels here, certainly outside of this table as well. But we tried to sort of show the green what those sensitivities look like. The orange table is just Bright Choice. The green table is Renewable 100. The light blue table at the top right is adding those two tables, the orange and the green table together. And then the bottom table, the dark blue table there is just showing our value proposition change over time, which Kelly already presented in the public webinar presentation piece as well. I will note a couple things and then I'll wrap up, is there are CCAs that are considering or have historically been more expensive than the IOU at rough times. Overall, they're still providing savings, but maybe at a certain time of year or a certain year, they have been at a modest premium to the IOU. And we expect a number of CCAs to probably do that in 2026. So this table doesn't show it, but certainly that is in the realm of possibilities for the board to consider. And last, and certainly not least, all in the context of we are lowering rates. We are lowering rates for our customers by 25 to 30% on the generation side of the bill, which is what we look at. That is inclusive of PCIA. Just the AVA portion is upwards of a 50% reduction year on year. So we're doing a huge, we are trying to reduce rates very, very significantly for our customers. Obviously, in order to do that, there's a number of measures that we need to consider taking to manage the financial picture. Value proposition is one of the biggest levers that we can kind of pull at that. So that is it for me in today's discussion.
Perfect. So for this item, what we're going to do is we're going to take public comment first, then we'll engage in questions and dialogue. So do we have any public comment at our remote locations? I don't see any public comment at remote locations. What about in person? Public comment on this item? Would you please proceed?
Jim Lutz, I'm on the CAC, but I'm speaking for myself. And it's just a minor note that I want to remind board members that customers, when they're looking at their electricity bill, don't differentiate between PG&E and AVA. So even though AVA's going down, forced to go down because of PG&E going down, PG&E's distribution is going up slightly. So there won't, and before this change, PG&E's distribution is about twice what AVA's generation is. So AVA's portion of customers' bill is only a third of it. And after this, even though their total bill will go down, I think slightly, PG&E's portion of it actually becomes larger and AVA's portion becomes smaller. So just to keep in mind that when people are complaining about electricity rates, they're not differentiating at all. And the bulk of the price, the charge is PG&E's distribution transmission rates. So just to keep that in mind. That's all.
Thank you. Do we have any comments online?
Are there no hands raised at this time?
Okay, so let's close public comment. Just very quickly, my recollection is from our board meeting, our last board meeting, that the current estimate is approximately an 11% bill decrease. Is that right?
Electricity portion.
Yeah, not natural gas, fair enough. The electricity portion of the bill would be down approximately 11%, give or take a variety of factors.
That's right. It was on that slide. I didn't touch on it, but that very
Yeah.
slide, that complicated bar chart kind of broke that down. So generation rates are coming down around 30%. Unfortunately, the transmission distribution portion is going up about 4%. And so the net decrease on the bill is 10 to 12% roughly.
And so without belaboring that point and jumping, but just as a matter of chair privilege, I don't know that that was sufficiently highlighted
Okay.
in the presentation. Because I walked away, I had the same thing here on my notes, like when you talk about the 11%, because if we say 50, it sounds so dramatic, and then especially if we do PR around 50 or 40, 32, I mean, there were various numbers, right? But it could really
Yes.
it could cause confusion. How's that? But that being said, I don't want to jump the gun. I'd like to have board members weigh in as they would like. So we'll start with Member Roche, Committee Vice Chair Roche.
Thank you. And sorry for my tardiness to everyone. Can you go back to the slide about what the average bill might look like? Because I want, sort of going back to the comments about the, so what the net decrease might be for a customer. Am I hearing, did you say 10 to 20%, Howard? Like what's the net decrease for your average customer in
The
rate?
net decrease, if you're inclusive of the delivery related charges, is around 11%. That's, go to slide 16, it talks about that. It's too earlier, Adrian. This is where I was referencing the bullets on the right. We're highlighting the different breakdown of that percentage reduction and sort of in the different components there. I don't know, Member Roach, sorry to interrupt, but if you were referencing this specifically or something, one of the others.
Yeah, I mean, maybe go to the next one, the slide 18. I think the two slides further. Yeah, there. Because I'm just trying to understand like an average bill, because if what is there, right? So you're saying even if we change our Bright Choice from 5 to 0, or we do renewable up to 150, your average ratepayer is going to be still paying 11% less than their bill today. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, just to be clear, this table is just generation costs. So it doesn't,
Okay.
It's not inclusive of the transmission portion. Obviously, we do appreciate that at the end of the day, customers see their overall electricity bill. We have zero control over the transmission distribution portion. So the bullets I pointed in that prior slide capture those various elements. The table here, the substance of this presentation is on the generation cost, because that's what we really manage on our side.
Okay, and then going back to the one where we're talking about what, I guess this would be, wait, I think it's another couple slides when you talk about what the difference might be if we did, keep going. No, I guess it wasn't the one where we talked about how much we might save if we do 1% versus 0% on the value.
It's later.
Oh,
It's later. It's
literally
the second
very
to
last.
last slide. Or last,
Yeah, thank you. Because I just, right, okay, yeah, there, right. I sort of because I want to make sure, right, if we go flat with PG&E for Right Choice, for example, then you're saying the revenue contribution would be 31 million. Is that right?
Just on the Bright Choice piece, I would go all the way to the right table, that light blue table, which would be 64.6 million, which is assuming that you toggle both the Bright Choice discount and the Renewable 100 premium in similar sort of steps.
And then, and what is the deficit we're trying to account for now with all of these different things that we're going to try to do to save money? What is that number?
If you go back one slide, the total number is $247 million when you're netting in July 1, 2025 through December 31st, 2026. So it's an 18-month period because we do have a surplus in this July through December of 2025 period. That's $247 million. And so you can see these set of actions. To be clear, this will change a little bit in December. We're going to have some, we're going to have some additional line items, but also adjust these a little bit in different ways to provide a few different scenarios. But this is how we presented it in November.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, I want to make sure we're constantly giving a discount, but if people are going to have a discount anyway, and just to be safe for our own deficit purposes, we go flat with PG&E at the zero, for Bright Choice. I don't know. I'm just sort of interested what that savings would be. And it looks like over there it would add another, was that like, it looked like it was maybe about 6 million.
It would be 6 million just on the Bright Choice aspect, but 13 million if you're also assuming another step on the Renewable 100 premium.
Yeah, and we go to 150 in the renewable. Yeah, I mean, I'm just, just if we do that right until we get more evidence whether or not it really did go down for our ratepayers, then that might be a reasonable thing to suggest. That's, I guess, what I was getting at. So, thank you for walking me through that.
Do we have other questions or comments at this time?
No. Oh,
Please proceed.
thank you, Chair. So great work on the outreach efforts. The turnout is what it is, but we're putting the effort out there, and I appreciate that. I did notice, like on our agendas, we flag if anyone has any accommodation requests. I'm just wondering how we handle that when we do public outreach.
Didn't understand the question.
You say accommodation request.
So, for example, on our agenda, we say meetings are accessible for people with disabilities and
yeah.
I don't know, translation.
No, we have
et
not
cetera.
received any accommodation requests.
But how do we promote that? What's the process to promote that for community engagement?
That's a great question. Well, I'll have to go back and look at the messages that we've sent out for this particular meeting. Since it's not a public Brown Act meeting, I think the messaging has been a little bit different. So I'd have to go back.
Yeah, just something to think about in the future so we're consistent in flagging just in case anyone has that unique request, whether it's language, different language or American Sign Language. And then with respect to the bill, I still think there's a lot of confusion. So if there's any way, once we land on what we're going to decide in our next board meeting, but visuals in terms of like the actual PG&E statement and showing the distinction between what is AVA, what is PG. I think we just need to kind of third level education, simplify it for folks, and visuals are going to be very, very key. That would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay,
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure, please proceed.
Are you requesting that we as an agency do that after making any changes or at the value proposition presentation to the public?
Both. Yeah.
So one comment I'll make is our next public webinar on this presentation is tomorrow. So it would be difficult, and I don't know that I would recommend changing the presentation tomorrow versus what we presented before.
Yeah.
So maybe my ask is that we don't change the public webinar, but absolutely I take that guidance as whatever we land on from a board decision perspective, we have to think very hard about how to communicate this effectively in terms of what the change is. And we, of course, already expend a lot of effort to try to educate around how to read a bill, and we will need to continue to do that because it is a really challenging area to actually decipher that. But we totally acknowledge that, so there's definitely more efforts that we want to put underway on that front.
Understood, and that makes sense. Thank you for that suggestion. Concur. Thanks.
You're welcome. We will proceed over to Member Balch.
Thank you, Chair. So I apologize. I missed the larger board meeting last month, so I'll definitely go rewatch it or watch it. Let me ask about one of the things that caught my attention. I just wanted to ask if there was any discussion. Is the exact same slide that Member Roche had? It is slide, they're not numbered, but it's 38 on the PDF or agenda. It's the value proposition adjustments, and it was showing Bright Choice and Renewable 100. Do you mind bringing that back up? Thank you, Adrian. Okay, so my question for the staff is clearly two different levers, right? The first lever is on Bright Choice, the discount reduction from the 5% lower, and each one presented here. The second side of this is the Renewable 100 premium to increase up. And I guess what I'm trying to understand, was there conversation about balancing the, for lack of a better word, the shortfall between the two product types offered, or was it not that? Does that make sense? So, for example, which mathematically, I think the Bright Choice, well, let me back up. The premium on Renewable 100 is bringing in 33 million. So presumably they're going to carry that much of the load. Is that correct? Was that evaluated? And hopefully I'm making
Yeah.
sense.
So the way we approach this, historically, when we've kind of bumped each percentage, we've bumped the premium. So the percentage discount in Bright Choice is roughly equivalent to a 1/4 cent differential in the premium for R100. Historically, that's how we've done it. And as you can see, the total numbers add up a little bit. I think to your point, the load is not equivalent on both of those things. That's not how we address this issue and why we recommend that stair step. We did that because we're looking at the price of renewable energy certificates in the short term, which is, there's a market price for that. And we set the differential between Bright Choice and Renewable 100. And so we're trying to maintain that differential with each of these stair steps. There is no strict obligation, of course, that's what we approve here. The board could elect to change that selection. But from a cost of service perspective, this is most maintaining that differential.
Okay. Yeah. And through the chair. Yeah. And when I mean load, I don't mean load as to grid load. I meant like burden of financial help to the, I guess, for example, to staff, maybe a point of clarification. We have more, I presume, more Bright Choice customers in our portfolio than Renewable 100. Is that correct?
That's right. Our Renewable 100 load is 35-ish%, roughly 1/3, plus or minus 5%. Yeah.
Load by number of customers or load by
load? By load.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you. That's what I was trying to figure out, because we have the commercial, which adds to this mix of that we've got to factor in. Okay. Okay. So by doing this stair stepping, we're trying to maintain the differential, slightly balancing it out, but also being cognizant of keeping that separation between the two product choices so that we don't blend them too close together. Is that a correct summation?
That is correct. And I would say the biggest component there is really maintaining the differential in the rates. And that differential in rates is reflective of the market premium for short-term renewable energy certificates. So
yeah,
that's the primary driver. I think the other elements are sort of secondary.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. That's all, Chair.
Thank you. So Member Fugazi, please.
Thank you. So as the newest, or should I say greenest, because pun intended, the greenest member of this group, our population, we're 45% Latino and the Spanish speaking. Fortunately, I have somebody Spanish speaking in my office, but we have a lot of people from our Spanish speaking community that often have questions. And so even on our website, there's a button they can click and it goes into Spanish. We use Wordly. If they want to do public comment, anybody wants to do public comment. I think it's like 400 languages. I didn't even know there were that many, but it does on-demand translating as well. So I think that the tools are out there. I know we also, as mentioned, for sign language, but we need to do our best to be inclusive of our communities, because I have a lot of Cambodian and Vietnamese, and I just think in 2025, almost 2026, we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to make sure that everyone has access to this information and that everyone can comment on this. So that was just my 2 cents.
So thank you. At this point in time, I'll come Member Anderson. Nope. Okay. Did you have any?
So I don't have a question. I just had more of a comment. I think it would be hard for me to lower the value proposition to 0, meaning to be equal with PG&E, because I feel like as an agency, we have marketed and prided ourselves on being slightly less expensive than PG&E. with respect to Bright Choice. So I would hate to deviate from that narrative that we have now established out there in the community. So those are just my comments.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a couple of just big picture questions, trying to remember what we talked about at our last meeting. So the 11% was one of those. The second one, and by the way, on 11%, I think it'd be more impactful on that slide, whatever it was that had the 4 bullets on the right-hand side, to have those and then have a box around that 11%. Because I think it's just, you need to not confuse people. They should expect an 11% bill reduction, period. Big picture, on average. But I think that we had a discussion about PCIA. And I thought I heard something said to the effect of, we think that PCIA, that this is a one-time jump. And so the financial impact is primarily in this 1 year. And in the future, it's not going to be so bad. So maybe our value proposition will change in the future. So kind of tease out the various parts of what I'm saying to see what truth is there.
Yeah, there's some of that I'll redirect a little bit. So 2026, we're seeing the PCIA structure change. That is the power charge and difference adjustment. It's a really critical aspect of a portion of the generation costs. We are seeing the PCIA increase in 2026, and that lessens our financial headroom to operate. So our AVA generation portion is smaller in that sort of bar chart, right? That's the yellow box got a little bigger, the orange box got a little smaller as a component of total generation costs. The yellow bar increased for 2 reasons with that PCI restructuring. Part of it is the PCI restructuring itself for 2026 increased that box. Part of it was a true up for 2025 that further increases that yellow box. And so the true up for 2025 is a one-time thing that will not happen again in 2027, of course. There will be a true up for 26 that happens in 27, but that true up will just be based off of how market prices actualize. It's not going to be based off of a PCI reform, which is what took place in 2025. So there's a portion of that increase in PCIA that is a one-time issue. And then there's a portion that is an ongoing PCIA now is forever changed and will be structurally larger, at least given these particular market inputs. I will also say in the future, that was all track 1 of PCI reform. There is a track 2 that will look at other energy products that feed into PCIA. That is going to be reevaluated. That whole process, that CPUC proceeding, will kick off in 2026, most likely. That will be a 1 year to 2 year process and most likely go into effect in 2028, whatever those changes may be, which is hard to forecast.
Chair, can I ask a
Yes,
follow-on?
please.
Is there, who audits the PCIA? Meaning there's this supposition that there's stranded assets, right? There's assets, investments that PG&E has made that they're no longer needing because AVA is taking some of that load, and other agencies are as well in terms of CCAs up and down the state. So who is looking to see that PCIA number is still accurate, given that energy prices have been way up and they could potentially resell those assets to other agencies?
That is a great question. I will give you a short answer, and I could spend a lot longer down a rabbit hole on this topic.
Okay.
The short answer is PG&E, the IOUs, make their filings. They have one-sided information in those filings. They have their legacy contracts, which others do not have purview into. They make those filings. Those are public filings. Others can comment on them. We, CalCCA, other CCAs always comment on those to ask questions, pick holes in the process, and make sure we get as much clarification and try to make some adjustments. And then the CPUC approves those things. Historically, there are not a lot of adjustments that are accepted in that process. This time around, in the reform process itself, which is a separate proceeding from just the ERA filing, which is the establishing of the numbers, but the methodology process certainly had a lot of commentary as well. We felt the process was rushed. We felt that the process shouldn't be retroactive. We filed for a rehearing. Both AVA did and CalCCA did. Our rehearing was denied. Recently, CalCCA has filed for an appeal on some grounds. Leave it there.
Okay.
That's litigation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I think the The only other thought, because we've had a little bit of discussion about the pricing, I agree that our brand has been some type of discount. So I think that we have to consider the brand impact, even if it's nominal, even if it's 0.5%, there needs to be a discount. And if you wanted to squeeze a little bit more out of the renewables for 1 year, I would have zero problem with that. Because if you went from 0.25 to 1.25 to 1.5, you pick up an extra $6.5 million. And we're trying to cover a delta of about 15 to 20, right?
Depending on
On all the other levers, right? So, you know, if you pick up another 6.5 here and maybe you go to 0.5 or not, you know, I think there's enough room there still to play with, but I just don't really want to impact our brand. We're at a discount. We've spent a lot of time conveying that brand.
Right. And really it's about affordability, right? It's about being more affordable than PG&E with respect to the Bright Choice plan, right? So.
And people are going to see significant affordability changes just because of how the market has changed. So is that a raised hand or is that nope, thank you. I think we have, okay, Member Balch, please.
Yeah, I just maybe point of clarification related to the 2025. So I'm interpreting that as what I would call in my world like a cumulative effect catch up. And is that a correct way to understand that one-time impact from in accounting we have it, right, all the time. It's a one-time change in methodology, right? And so then you have a cumulative impact. You can usually people kind of understand that, right? It's a change in how we measure. And I'm understanding that correctly with your explanation a little bit ago, right, Howard?
I think more or less, I wouldn't say it's truly cumulative looking at historicals. It's simply looking at 2025. So there is a fundamental kind of methodology change on calculating PCI where they said, you know, if we're going to determine a market price of resource adequacy, we used to determine it this way. We are now determining it this way, looking at a different set of data. And therefore that the value of some of PG&E's legacy resources actually goes down because of that methodology. And therefore that's what was changed, the PCI setting methodology. That's what increases the PCIA, because they basically said the value of resource adequacy is less. If the market value is less, therefore the legacy resources are more out of the money, and therefore they have to get paid more to be kept indifferent. So that's the fundamental what happened, and it went back reaching into 2025 to true that up, but it didn't go beyond 2025.
So actually that's I personally find that a very good clarification, and here's why. When I initially heard it from you, I keep thinking about this long-term legacy contract, maybe a 20-year power procurement type agreement like we would have. And so that contract might have been in place since 2010 or something, right? And so then I didn't know if the PCIA adjustments reach back over each of the contracts that are still in effect, that still have some life left in them, but then had some historical time. So by the clarification that you've just stated, now I appreciate that, because now I understand, okay, 25 is it and only, and here is why. So it's not tied to the underlying procurement power production asset or procurement.
Sorry, one further clarification. It is tied to a long-term asset that could have been signed in 2010. That could be, say, a 30-year contract that goes to 2040, and that will remain in how they calculate the PCIA every year until 2040.
Yeah, but they didn't retro it. They didn't.
That's right. My clarification on the methodology change only went back so far as 2025, not beyond that. Yes.
That's exactly the clarification I needed. So thank you.
So one thing that I am sensitive to is the time, because we've hit about 45 minutes. So I think we should move along. I will just offer one closing comment. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think that whenever these assets get revalued under the PCIA, that there should be some sort of market test. So if that asset's only worth $50 million, then people should be able to buy that asset for 50 million and $1. Because allegedly that's the value of that asset. There needs to be a marketplace test, because otherwise these are just hypothetical and can be easily gamed. So with that, we'll move to our next item. Thank you for your presentation and for answering all of our questions. Our next item is the opt-out fee removal. This should be, I think, an easier one.
It should be an easier one,
So
yes,
let
but
us
it's still
proceed.
me. So
Please proceed.
oh, great. Adrian, would you just put thank you so much. Oh, and I'm realizing I forgot to introduce myself last time, but I think I've met everyone. I'm Kelly Bresbeck. Let's scroll down, and if we just pause at the summary or recommendation here. So today, when a customer opts out of our service, under certain circumstances, they are charged a $5 fee if they're a residential customer, or a $25 fee per meter if they are a commercial customer. I recognize right now, in the interest of the previous conversation about how we're looking at this potential budget deficit for 2025, this seems like not the right time to talk to pause an opportunity to maybe take back some revenue. When we walk through this, you'll see why the timing does make sense. But I'm just acknowledging that the timing seems incorrect, but really we're not actually gaining that much from this. So today, because we have a roughly 95% participation rate, so that means that of the customers that AVA could serve, only 5% have chosen to left our service. About 60,000 customers have opted out. We've only collected opt-out fees from about 15,000 of those, in large part because during the first year that we start serving a community, there is no opt-out fee. So for our Stockton and Lathrop customers, they just started service in April of 2024. There's no opt-out fee until 2025. I mean, and add one to what I just said. And then if you just moved in to a new residence, you have 60 days. So basically you can get one bill and be like, who is this on my bill? And then call us. And there's a 30% chance we will maintain you. If you call and talk to our customer service reps, 30% chance you're going to stick around. But if you're calling in those first 60 days, there's no opt-out fee. And so by and large, we have not collected. We've collected on average, it's like $14,000 annually. And we've seen, if you scroll to the next page here, what we've found is that in general, a customer, this is going to create more problems, more confusion. When we did our most recent enrollment in Stockton and Lathrop, someone saw, oh, there's an opt-out fee. They posted it to Facebook. This is a scam. We shouldn't be charged an opt-out fee. Never you mind, they weren't going to get charged an opt-out fee, but the optics is not beneficial for our agency. It doesn't show the customer service and the customer focus that we have. It makes us look like we're not a good actor in the space. So knowing that we're looking at doing yet another enrollment in 2026, this is a great time for us to revisit this. This was part of the initial terms and conditions. And so this would be an opportunity for us to update our terms and conditions, remove this policy, and move forward without opt-out fees. So if we scroll through a little bit more, we will see, I'll just note here in that last paragraph, we think that there is a possibility that customers are choosing to leave our service early because they want to avoid a fee, but I don't actually have a way of showing that. There isn't really a great mechanism to collect that. We do ask customers why they're opting out. The most common response is other. So they're not really providing that. I will say going forward, we've removed the other. So they'll be forced to select something, but usually it's, I don't like that you automatically enrolled me in your service, right? So there's nothing really that we can do about that short of explaining what we do. And then here, if we just talk a little bit about what other CCAs are doing, because people do move, right, from CCA territory. You know, if you move from Contra Costa County to Alameda County, maybe you were in MCE territory and they had a different policy. It's split. About half of the CCAs that we looked at have some sort of an opt-out fee, half don't. The CCAs that do have an opt-out fee have a very similar setup that we have in place today. $5 for a residential customer, $25 per meter for a commercial customer. That there's a similar setup of first 60 days, there's no fee. Oftentimes for the first year of service, there's no
So
fee.
not to prejudice the discussion,
Mhm.
but I think what you've laid out is just basically very low impact in terms
Yes.
of revenue
Yes.
and negative brand
Mhm.
impact,
Yes,
just in summary.
exactly.
And so I guess my question really goes to, do we have any public comment on this item?
Great. Thank you.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, so
in
we're
the
closing
hearing.
online public comment. Okay, now in the room, public comment at your locations. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Is there, are there committee member comments? Member Anderson?
Not a comment, just a question. Is
Questions.
there a cost to opting out?
Is there a cost
To the agency?
to the agency
Ava?
of
Like, is
opting
it-
out?
To removing the fee.
Correct. I mean, no, not to
Oh.
removing the
Oh.
fee, but like, how did we arrive at a fee? Does it mean like when you remove a customer from our roles,
Yeah.
is there staff time or is there some type of cost associated with taking
Yeah.
someone off the Ava roles?
Right, that's a great question. So that's embedded in the fees that we pay to SMUD and PG&E because really that's an automated action,
I
right?
see.
They're sending information back and forth between the two parties
Mhm.
to remove that customer.
There's not a variable explicit cost or fee for
Okay.
that. Is a short
Okay.
answer.
Right, it's embedded.
Okay.
Just to be completely transparent, when we launched in 2018, we borrowed the terms and conditions from other existing CCAs,
Sure.
and that's what they were doing. So
Mhm.
we followed suit, and
Mhm.
now we're taking a pause to look at it and say, does this still make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Online or at the remote locations, please, Member Roche, Vice Chair Roche.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the suggestion. It does seem like a reasonable thing to move forward with. I was just going to add in just an anecdotal comment about the why people opt out. Just sort of anecdotally, I had a friend, he was in Palm Springs and he had really high energy rates because they have some fancy house with lots of things. And he just had a really difficult time trying to understand why it had leaped so high. He didn't know what the drainage was as electricity. But he told me after that he removed himself from his local CCA because he couldn't decipher the two, and each agency couldn't give him comfort on the two, and it was just simpler to be dealing with one agency. And so I think you're right that this other question is the confusion and not necessarily sort of, like you said, people wanting to opt out early necessarily because they worry about the fee. So fine with removing the fee. Just wanted to give you that feedback. And this is someone who I would say is very savvy, very smart, and still felt the need to clarify this in order to solve this problem. So anyway, just an anecdotal story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments online? Because I think this is a simple item, very, very low financial impact, brand enhancing.
Yes.
Seeing none, we'll close this item out and we'll move to our next item. Item number 6, community investment grants.
Thank you very much. I will be presenting on that. Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. JP Ross, Vice President of Local Development, wanting to give an update on where we are with our community investment grants and plans for future grant work. So next slide, please, Adrian. Just a couple reminders. We haven't talked about grants for a while. So why is AVA funding grants? So we have about $10 million allocated to grant work. And the rationale for that is how we can kind of leverage community partnerships and other organizations that are doing good work in our communities to further AVA's organizational and programmatic objectives. And then work, through community groups to do that. So we'll go through our kind of grant funding strategic priorities and how those strategic priorities mesh with some of the technical areas that we are working on. And we also really want to use grants to build and foster strategic partnerships and trust with our community and community-based organizations. And I think our our early work in the grant space has certainly done that. So we'll talk about some of the proud and some of the work that we've done so far. A couple of elements to take into consideration with respect to grant making. We have done some analysis of our delegated authority to issue grants, and as a joint powers authority, it is incumbent on AVA to make sure that we're issuing grants that further kind of the organizational objectives and that do not benefit any particular interest or private party. So this speaks to the community nature of our community grants. We're not able to make any kind of gift of public funds. So we want to make sure that we have a clear and public solicitation and evaluation process, which we do for all of our grants. But we're not issuing grants for philanthropic purposes or kind of administrative support, kind of capacity building, if you will, for granting organizations. There has to be some objective that fulfills and coincides with AVA's organizational mission and joint powers authority. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a review of how we have structured grants in the past. So we did do our initial round of community innovation grants in 2019. Those were 6 grants of $40,000 apiece. They were short-term in nature and small amounts. At this $40,000 level, we had some good learnings out of that for workforce development, clean energy pilots. Some of the initial feedback that we got from those grantees was the size of the grants was insufficient to really hire employees, start and do new programmatic work. It was really a way to augment existing work that was being done. So if we want to kind of catalyze new work being done that is furthering AVA's objectives, we took away from that we needed to increase the size and lengthen the duration of the grants, which is some of the feedback that we've factored into our grant strategy that we've been working with over the last 18 months or so. During 2020, 2022, there was this little thing that happened to our world called COVID, and that had some dramatic impacts. And so we actually shifted our grant making at that point in time to be responsive to the pandemic and issued out a couple $1 million in grants to our cities, as well as to a lot of the organizations that were doing good work in response to COVID, kind of an emergency response to what was happening in our communities. And then in 2023, we came back to our community investment grants that was really focused on supporting kind of local development and AVA programmatic activities. And so those grants have been issued. I'll talk about the ones that we have out in market now. They're multi-year grants of $300,000 a piece, stretching up to 3 years. And they're very outcome and milestone driven, similarly kind of aligned to our organizational priorities and objectives. And then we do have ongoing hyperlocal sponsorships run out of the marketing team. These are much smaller grants, $2,500 each, and there's an ongoing open enrollment process for those. And so far, we've given out about 150 of those to the tune of $375,000. So that's an overview of the different grants that we've done. Next slide, please. So we do have existing community investment grants that are in operation now. Our first grant was with Copper. Channing Street Copper is actually a local business that started here developing battery-powered induction stoves. They were doing some induction education and awareness for us at farmers markets. It was very part of our induction cooktop lending program to raise awareness about induction. We ended up closing that grant after the end of the first year, as Copper was kind of focused more on doing their work, building the business, and we were happy with kind of what we had gotten out of the induction education awareness, and we also closed down our induction cooktop lending program. So we closed that grant down. We do have now 5 grants that are active, 2 of which are supporting workforce development activities for young individuals and focused on workforce development for youth coming from disadvantaged communities. That's with Rising Sun and Agape. Agape is a combination of Cypress Mandela and Revalue, which is an energy efficiency company who's doing training for them. So 2 grants that are doing workforce development for youth, and then 2 grants, one with Green the Church and one with Interfaith Power and Light. And those are to install level 2 chargers at places of worship owned by the community. And so those are grants are currently active, and we're identifying sites, and there's been progress on at least the first site in Hayward at a church through Green the Church. And we have our Emerald Cities Collaborative Resilience Hub grant. We talked about that in detail at the board meeting in November. They're doing some of the definition and eligibility criteria work for resilience hubs. And now that we have the Resilience Hub program approved at a high level, they're going to start doing kind of awareness raising for resilience hubs to bring sites into our Resilience Hub program. So all 5 of those grants are active. They're all $300,000 grants for up to 3 years. The Emerald Cities Collaborative grant in this case is 1.5 years. So that's an overview of the existing community investment grants that we have active right now. Next slide, please. So our grants are really focused on strategic priorities and technical focus areas. So there's overlap certainly in the grants that we have out in market, but we like to think of them falling into one or more of these 4 strategic priority areas: workforce development, education and experiential learning, community empowerment, which is a lot around kind of community ownership of assets, and research and innovation are the 4 strategic priorities. And then the technical focus areas is we would expect that these to have some crossover with our programmatic work in the areas of energy efficiency, building and transportation electrification, and resilience. So this presents a way to both scope the work and then evaluate grant proposals as they come in for how they're fitting across our strategic priorities and within these technical focus areas. Next slide, please. So we will, we have these 5 grants in market now. Our expectation is to issue 3 grants a year. This can flex a little bit, but if we did 3 grants per year, we have, funding for grants through the 2023 year. You can see here as you start issuing grants, they're multi-year grants. You start to scale up the number of grantees that you're operating in parallel through 2027, and then they start to scale down on the assumption that you're bringing in 3 new grantees a year, and then after the 3rd year, the first ones start to scale off, and we issue about 24 unique grants. In the first year, as we were getting the program going, we did sign a grant agreement with 5 grantees to kind of kickstart it, but we'll expect to do about 3 grants per year going forward. We would be engaging with the public and counterparties on identifying grant opportunities, and we'll talk a little bit about how we plan to do that. All of our grants do go through a public and competitive solicitation process with specific evaluation criteria per grant area, and then we bring all of our grants to you all for to opine on and hopefully approve as we bring them to you for execution. That operation. Next slide, please. So just some oversight, or not oversight, but overview of what some of the other details of these grants. We do expect them to be multi-year. We think the multi-year grant structure works to help build organizational capacity to support this type of work. The grants are kind of milestone based, so we get deliverables that have been agreed upon with the grantees, and we structure our payments based on milestones. And we do also have kind of this strategic lens. So we are kind of ideating and identifying grants that fit within that strategic and technical crossover that are very much aligned with AVA's organizational priorities. We do a lot of collaborative decision making and work with the grantees to really make sure that there's buy-in and capability of the grantees to deliver on the agreements and recognize that things change and we have to be flexible as we work through delivering on the milestones and what we have agreed to with the grantees to provide this value to our community through our CBO partners. Yeah, and then I think lastly, we're just kind of a highlight that we are tracking all the deliverables and the milestones to make sure that we have oversight on that the grantees are delivering what they have agreed to. Next slide, please. So as we go into this next year, we do want to work with the public on identifying the next round of grants. So we just we're talking with CAC Chair Hernandez and Vice Chair Souza this week about setting up a public meeting in January, a public workshop in January. We did this before as we did our first round of grants. So we'll put together a public workshop to solicit ideas for grants. We'll also work with MuniPals and set up internal workshops here at AVA so that we can workshop, what is our next round or potential rounds of grant ideas. And then really through the next calendar year, we'll be going through the process of developing and issuing the request for proposals and evaluating them such that towards the end of the calendar year, we would be bringing the next round of grants to you all for approval and kicking off the next slate of work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Before going to committee member discussions, could we please have any public comments?
There are no hands raised at this time online.
So we will close online public comment. Coming into the room, if you'd like to public comment, Mr. Luce, would you please approach the lectern?
Jim Lutz again. I like the presentation and I like the way it's structured. There seems like there's a gap between the hyperlocal and 300,000 several year grant. And I was thinking maybe it'd be good to have more of a portfolio so that even though that's what the early grantees were getting is that range, but something in the $5,000 to $100,000 range for 1 or 2 years, and maybe something along the line of what the CCA in San Diego does, where it's administered by a local foundation, so it doesn't take up a lot of the CCA staff to do it. So just an option to include.
Thank you. Any public comment at our remote locations? Seeing none, we'll close off public comment. I would like to go to, I can't tell if you're asking.
Sorry, yeah, I'm trying to unmute, apologize. So just lots of appreciation and positive feedbacks. This presentation was very clear, concise. The visuals were amazing. So just really, really great work. Thank you.
Okay, other questions or reaction to the presentation? Member Roche or Vice Chair Roche, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I was going to I just wanted to ask, have you gotten to the place yet where an applicant will reapply because they've met their milestones, they've been a good community partner, but there's still more work to do and they're looking for more funding?
We have not. So the one reapplication that we had was Rising Sun, they were a recipient of our initial 2019 Community Innovation Grant for $40,000. And they, came back into this second round and have received a $300,000 grant for 3 years that they're doing for the early workforce development. But now we'll be issuing our second round of these larger grants next year. So that would be the next opportunity for somebody to come back for a second cut.
Okay, and you don't have any policy against that, I assume.
We do not.
Okay.
I think we're expecting that the types of grants that we issue will change. I suppose we could do like another round of an exact copy of the last solicitation we did. That would certainly be easier from a staff time perspective to just to do it again. But part of the ideation is to create some distribution and diversity within the grants, and so we're thinking about we'd be doing a different type of grant, because each grant solicitation has a specific goal associated with it, and that's what we're going to be workshopping as we go into this next round.
If I could just add, I want to specifically call out and just emphasize a little bit of what JP said, which is in our early rounds of grants, when we did some smaller level grants, it was hard to make them clearly deliverable outcome workflow based. They're at a dollar size that you're sort of generally supporting an organization, which may make it a little bit more susceptible to what you're saying, which is a grantee would want to reapply. There was specific feedback to say, bigger dollars and longer term funding would really actually make this more meaningful in a way that we could sustain this type of work. So the way we've structured our grants to some extent addresses that issue, because they're 3-year grants now with some meaningful dollars over that time. And because they are very specifically outcome and deliverable and workflow based, it creates a situation where if the same grant applicant apply for another workflow, we feel like it would be totally fair to reconsider them for this future workflow, and as opposed to they're just going to continue the work that they've already been doing, which may be great work, but because we're structuring this as an outcome based, presumably they deliver on the outcome of what we're seeking.
Yeah, thanks. And that's why I asked, because, one thing I think we've discovered in some of our local agency funding is there's this trap of the idea is it's supposed to be seed funding, maybe to start a program and then get them running so they can be sustainable after that, or use our grants as, leverage to get other funding from other sources. And I think, maybe the 3-year cycle will help reduce that, and then having different sort of focuses each time, but it's also in communication to sort of say that ahead of time, because so the concern is that then they just become absolutely dependent on that annual or triannual bucket from an AVA or another municipal agency. I think sort of being as clear as we can, which it looks like we are trying to be. I just wanted to give that feedback. So thank you.
Yeah, and we structured these grants to be pretty specific and outcome based, so there's no expectation that we're going to issue this solicitation, year 0, and then in 3 years we're going to issue it again, and so you could kind of keep coming back for it. So to Howard's point, there's a specific set of deliverables we're looking for each time.
Great, I appreciate that work. Thank you.
Moving to Member Balch.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let me start off by saying I support where we're going, and I think we need to be trying to get resilience hubs and these grants and all the seed money elements. So I'll start with that. But I'm going to maybe just make sure I say it for my fellow colleagues on the board. We just talked about the PCIA changes that came up. We just are talking about the shortfall and the relations with the new changes we are facing with as an agency. The circumstances are really, I think, a bit, there's a bit of headwind on next year for AVA. And so I just want to kind of do a few things. I want to just mention that, not all things have been consistent. If we reevaluated this today in light of the information we had, would we have designed it the way we have? Have we committed to it the way we have? Should we just make sure we have a healthy skepticism do we need to consider a pause for a year until we have some other things clarified? So I'm gonna say that might not be appropriate. Staff can evaluate that consideration in light of what we're dealing with. But a lot of my constituents are desperately looking for cheaper power, right? As we know, they want the lowest power price they can have. And so I am confident, as just as JP said, the grants have to be large enough to actually have an impact. They've got to be something that can actually achieve a goal. Administrative costs to do it has to be, high and tight, not excessive. And frankly, they've got to be of enough caliber and quality to deliver so that a customer can understand why the agency still has this as an element in its goal setting. And so I just want to mention that just so that I guess I'll say that, right, for consideration. That being said, I think we should keep proceeding the way we are, but being aware that things have changed since we initially set this up. So thank you.
Okay, so I don't think I've got anything from Member Anderson, but what I will do, or Chair.
Can I just ask one quick thing, Chair, when you're ready?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Oh, I just to follow up on what Member Balch just said, that I think this money has been set aside in the budget, this 0.5 million, and my understanding is it won't be refilled, right? So this is a budget item that's currently in the budget, but we're not continually adding to this. Is that right?
That's correct. It's been allocated through historical local development funds, roughly $7 million.
Okay.
Obviously up to the board to decide if future allocations happen there.
Yeah, okay, good. I just want to be clear about that we're not continually adding to that. It's not an ongoing line item.
So I think I was going in the same direction.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm gonna probe to just clarify, because one of the topics that we spoke about at our last meeting, and which was on today's slide for item 4, was adding an additional $10 million to the local development fund, or potentially shaving either our contribution or an existing amount that's in an account. So I think just so that we're all consistent in the language that we use, when we were talking earlier about the $10 million potential savings, was that in terms of a new commitment that would be eliminated, or is that taking some of the 100 million and making it 90?
It was the latter. So it's taking the 100 million, making it 90, looking backwards, but it also does include some of the current fiscal year, but I'll put that in the historical context because we'd be cutting a little bit of the budget line item for this fiscal year. So it is on a backwards looking basis, and specifically I'll say it's $10 million that's not earmarked for a particular program. This is earmarked for grant making. That $10 million is not yet earmarked in a specific manner.
Thank you.
And in the FY26 budget, there was not an additional allocation for grant making because we had filled the bucket and we did not put any new money into it in FY26, just to, I think, address or
completely round out the answer.
With that said, we've done a clear fund accounting some number of months back. Always happy to refresh on some elements there. Some of that a lot of that funding is not spent yet. Most of it is earmarked. Some of it is actively planned in a program that is open and active, and some of it needs to be deployed through future grant making. So there are opportunities to make reductions in various programmatic areas to the extent we needed to in a further financial strain. And of course, there are other implications of making those decisions naturally.
Thank you. So I'm going to close out this item unless there's any last minute questions or thoughts. So we'll close out this item, also an informational item. I don't think you were looking for any additional guidance. We just had a little bit of discussion. So moving on to the next item on our agenda, if I'm not mistaken, that's the committee announcements. Are there any members of this committee that would like to make an announcement or request to place something on a future agenda? Member Balch, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the full clarification of the answer on the prior item. No, it's a question for staff, if I may. I noticed that we typically are scheduled for the first Wednesday, which would be January 7th, and that yet the agenda says the 14th. Is that just confirming the
that is
14th?
accurate. We had intentionally moved that back in light of the holiday break and some board member availability. That is the accurate time. To the extent that is a problem, please notify the clerk of the board or let me know. We'll make sure to account for that.
Okay, thank you.
I see no other hands raised at this time. So we're going to close this item out. And we are going to be now adjourned with a recognition that our next meeting is on Wednesday, January 14th at 3 p.m. at our same location. And I'm going to hit the gavel just for fun.
We're ahead of time.
Yeah.
Well done.
4:23.
Well done.